Good morning, everyone. This is author R. Weir, Randy, as everyone knows me. I decided not to do the music this event since I kind of kept it running last time. Forgot to turn it off. I also changed my background so you can see my office here with all my books back here, including my books and various other famous authors' books that I've accumulated through the years. But anyway, I'm author R. Weir, and I'm doing my Bringing to Life Characters author interview, and I'll have an author today who I met probably many years ago, and we've kind of chatted off and on every now and then, occasionally, but he was a feature in one of my recent newsletters. But first I wanted to talk about my new book, which comes out tomorrow, Murder by 100 Cuts, and I'll throw up the cover there, and it deals with the trial of the serial killer, the Front Range Butcher, that was in one of my previous books, which I'll talk about in a minute. And Murder by 100 Cuts, like I say, it comes out tomorrow. I do have paperbacks available. Anyone who wants to buy them, you can go to my website and order them. Here's a couple of early reviews from 3 different people that got an early copy of the book and reviewed for me. Reviews have been very good so far, which you're always happy about. And I always love to get more reviews. If you're a reviewer, book reader, and you want to, you read books, please post reviews, especially for indie authors, because it's always a struggle when the big authors, their book comes out and they already have 1,000 reviews. And, we struggle to get, 25, 50 reviews. I've been lucky enough to get a couple hundred on a few of my books, which is nice. And then today, I actually started yesterday till May 3rd, The Front Range Butcher, which is the book Murder by 100 Cuts, is kind of a follow-up to The Serial Killer, The Front Range Butcher, which my private eye Jarvis Man goes to nose with, is free. The ebook's free until May 3rd. So please download, get me up there. I'm right now I think I was 11th right now in on the Amazon hard-boiled mysteries. And that was a reader's favorite, was the gold medal winner for 2019 for best psychological thriller. So certainly a good book to read if you like serial killers. And I will warn you, it is a bit of a graphic book. If you're not into the graphic serial killer type of books, that's probably not your book. Neither of these books are probably for you. But if you enjoy those, check out either one of those. I know when I do events, there's a lot of people I say, I've got a serial killer book, and they're like, ooh, I got to have it. People are oftentimes fascinated by serial killers, which I always tell them, that's great. I'm glad you're fascinated. Just don't turn into one, which we hope that doesn't happen with most people. So anyway, go ahead and check those out. So I've got author here today. His name is Bruce Most. I'm going to bring him up here. He writes a lot of different mystery crime type books, and we'll find out more about him. So we're going to bring him on to there. So hi, Bruce. How you doing today?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's always nice. You and I we were talking before we started here today, and my wife says, I think you met him in Georgetown a few years ago when he was doing it. And I says, well, it may be, but it's been quite a while ago. It was probably before COVID stuff, but Georgetown has an author, a bunch of authors up there during the Christmas events that they do each year in December, the first 2 weekends of December. And I think you were up there once, and we may have said hi to you, but that was, many moons ago. And as all of us with the gray matter, don't always.
I've gotten very gray matter. I was going to ask you, do you belong to like the Colorado Authors League, anything like that?
I was at one time. I was in the Colorado Authors League. Jody Bowersox, I think, is the one who's running it these days. And Jody and I know each other pretty well.
Okay. Because
I also did the Colorado Christmas one year with them when I was in there, when it was down at the old Denver Mart, which is gone now, I think. And now they do it at the convention center, I believe.
Right.
And then they do one in Colorado Springs. And I did it one year, which it's a really expensive event, but they get a really big area, and they get a bunch of authors to share the cost. And I sold a few books at it, but it was fun, but you kind of share it. But
yeah, I was wondering if we had crossed paths there, because I've been active in Cal for 45 plus years. So
yeah, we may have seen each other then at the Colorado Christmas the one year.
Some of those sales, yeah.
which, to do a booth there, it's like $1,000 or whatever. So, you almost have to share. And the
Oh
size of the
yeah,
booth they get, it's
yeah.
really expensive.
Yeah. I haven't been to the convention center one, but
Yeah.
Merchandise Mart was actually a pretty good place. So
Yeah. Other than the parking was kind of a nightmare there. That was the only thing that was bad there. But I know they do it in Colorado Springs one as well. So, well, anyway, Bruce, glad to have you on. Tell us
thank
a
you.
little about yourself, where you're from, a little about your family.
Well, I live in Denver. Have for 40 plus years. Grew up in the Midwest, but this has been longer here than any place else. And I have my wife and I have been married 45 plus years. We have 2 children. My son lives in LA. He's a professional musician. My daughter and her family are fortunately here in the Denver area. So they have 2 children. So I have 2 grandkids I get to see now and then. And that's kind of where I am. We have a cat. So that's,
Well, they count too. We have 2 dogs. So, yeah, they're part of the family. So,
oh yeah. Yeah.
so you said Midwest.
You
were from
mentioned, you were
where in the
mentioning,
Midwest?
I was going to say, you were mentioning COVID. We've had cats over the years, and then we had a stretch where we didn't have one. And then COVID got started, and my wife got this idea said, we were 2 months into things or whatever. I think we should get a cat. It would really be good for our marriage to have a third. We're all cooped up, and so we got this
A buffer,
cat.
huh?
He's our COVID cat, I guess. And so I joke it helped save our marriage through COVID, but
The cat is a buffer, huh? Between you.
yes, it is.
Well, our dogs like to get between us just because they want the attention sometimes. Cats are sometimes a little more, depending on the cat, they can be a little more, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll sit on your lap, but, if you don't pay attention, be no
yeah,
big.
that's right.
So you said Midwest, you from the Midwest. Where in the
I
Midwest?
grew up in Iowa.
Oh, really? So did I. Des Moines, Iowa is where I grew
Yeah,
up.
I think I may have seen that somewhere. Yeah, I grew up in Cedar Rapids. So just
You ever get back there? Do you have family there?
well, of course, my folks are long gone. I have a childhood friend who still lives there, and I've gone back for some high school reunions. I don't get back there. It's usually 3 or 4 years at a time. I usually see my friend and we travel together and things like that. So I don't always have a demand to get back. I think I'm probably going to go back this summer.
Yeah.
It's
Humid.
what?
It's really humid in Iowa in the summertime. So.
Yeah, it's true. Although I've been fortunate, even in August, the days either I got lucky or they weren't as bad as I remember. Obviously, much more humid than Denver, but it's always it's green, which is one of the things I do like getting back to Iowa in that regard. So, and it is home. I grew up there through. Went to college at the University of Iowa, and so spent a lot of formative years in Cedar Rapids.
University of Iowa, of course, a lot of stuff we've been watching, following the Hawkeyes women's team, of course.
Oh yeah,
Hart, big deal about Caitlin. Now she's in the WNBA and all of this, and yeah, that's always exciting. I like to root for Iowa. They usually have pretty decent football teams too.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are your hobbies? What do you like to do in your spare time these days?
Spare time seems to always be at a premium, but I love photography is a big hobby for me, and my wife and I do a lot of traveling in the last 15 years, and we travel overseas, travel around the country, and so I'm always taking photographs. But I've done that photography since I was in college. I think I started taking photos, and so that's a big hobby of mine. And I do little photo books and just do a lot of photography. That's the main thing I do. I golf. I've played tennis over the years, but those are the main things. I'm not a stamp collector or play chess or something like that, but the photography is definitely a passion for me.
So when you travel, do you have like a motorhome, or do you fly
No,
everywhere
no,
you go?
no, we don't have a motorhome. I know you do. We don't do that. Depends on where we're going. I mean, sometimes we'll make trips, we'll drive up to Yellowstone or something like that. If it's other parts of the country, we'll just fly and rent. But we have traveled many times overseas. We've been to Europe and Asia. We're in Russia years ago. We just did a long cruise around South America that touched on the Antarctica on the way,
Oh,
and
wow.
we've done Caribbean cruises and that type of thing. So, in fact, the cruise that we just did in January, I didn't have a lot of time, but there were times where I sat down and I started work on a short story that I've since finished. I haven't sold it yet, but it's out to publications. So I don't do much writing when I travel. You obviously are there to see other things, but I did squeeze it in.
Do you ever come up with ideas when you travel, settings that you say, "Oh, that
Um,
would make a good setting for a book"?
yeah, I certainly think about it. All my stories, the novels I've done are all here in Colorado and one in Wyoming, and I've done some things in New York City where our son lived for a long time. But no, I've never to have something in, say, a different country I'd probably have to come up with a whole different, some characters or whatever. And I've thought about it, but no, nothing. I take it back. I do have a short story. In fact, it came out 3 or 4 weeks ago in a small online publication. It's about 2,000 words, pretty dark story. And I actually got that idea while I was traveling. We were in England doing we were doing a bus tour through England and Wales and Scotland. And one of the things we actually had a lecture by a guy on how they build the stone walls that they have all over. Have you ever been to England or that area?
I
You've
have
probably
not.
seen pictures. They
Yep.
have stone walls. They're thousands. Some of them are thousands of years old. And he's doing this. He's talking about how they put these together, because there's not mortar. They're just stones stacked in an effective way that lasts for a long time. And I'm sitting here listening to that, and I'm going, I started thinking about, this could make a short story, and eventually I wrote a short story on it. So I guess that is the one exception that I can think of, that when I've traveled, I've created not a novel, but a short story.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's good. Well, short stories, I have short story. I always played that line. What is a short story? How many words? I've got like an 8,000 word one that I said is short story, but that kind of bleeds into maybe more novella.
yeah,
And stuff. But it's always hard for me to wrap something up in a very short storyline like that. I get very complicated in my brain sometimes, but I'm always intrigued, because some people can write some really interesting stuff in
oh
just a
yeah,
few
yeah,
words.
yeah. It can be fun. I don't have a. I didn't write. I wrote short stories when I was first as a kid, when I was first writing. Then I didn't for all these years, and in recent years I've started to tackle a few more and got some of them published. But I agree with you. It can be challenging to keep it to a 7,000 words or less even. A lot of really popular short story writers do them in 3,500 words, but they're not doing a mystery whodunit. That gets too complicated usually.
Right.
It's a crime story of something that you can do. I mean, say the one I did from the walls was 2,000 words long. So,
Yeah. So how long have you been writing, and what motivated you to be a writer?
well, I started writing probably my late teens. I mean, maybe still in high school, and certainly into college. And that was short stories. And by then I had decided I wanted to go into journalism. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter or something like that. So I was looking toward the writing field, and I got a journalism degree at the University of Iowa. They had a great journalism school there when I was attending. But I was starting to write short stories on the side. Never sold anything, but at the time, it's not uncommon for young writers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started writing short stories, and just kind of grew from there. Eventually, turned to novels. Anyway, that's kind of where I got going, and I was fascinated with becoming a writer. And
so have you been doing it? You said when you were young, you were a teenager, college area. So you've been writing pretty much your whole life, or did you put it away for a while?
My whole life. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, I got a journalism degree, and I worked briefly on a newspaper, got drafted in the Army, came out, didn't go back to newspaper work. I started freelance writing. So I started doing magazine articles, for example. But during that time, probably when I first started freelancing, I started writing novels on the side. And I figured I wasn't going to make a living at that age producing novels. I wasn't a child genius or anything to do that. But I did write. I started writing novels. First couple didn't get me published. One of them did land a New York agent for me, who ultimately sold a couple of my books later on. But yeah, I wrote my entire life. Say, I was a freelance writer, did magazine work for like American Airlines in-flight magazine, and did a couple articles for Parade and Popular Science and Popular Mechanics. Wrote a variety of things, and then eventually drifted into writing and editing for a financial planning association that's based here in Denver, the people who are involved with the certified financial planners. And that became my big bread and butter that I did for close to 25 years, writing for them and editing. And that I wasn't on the staff, I was still a freelance writer. So, but yeah, writing's been my whole life. Other than a few scattered summer jobs, when I was in college, that's what I've done.
So you pretty much made a living at it then.
Yeah, like. I certainly did as a freelance writer. Yeah. I can't say I've made one as a novelist, but yeah, it's been, which I've been grateful for. I love writing. I've been my own boss, which is always nice. It can be a sketchy business, especially not sketchy, but just it's a rough business freelancing. It's pretty hard that way. But so
do you remember the first thing you ever wrote and what the motivation was for writing it? It may have been one of the ones you already mentioned, but
in sense of being published, or I'll tell you the first thing I wrote. The first thing I can think of that I wrote was when I was still late teens, probably in college. I was going to write a novel, and I got about 60 pages into it, I think, before I finished, before I just quit and did other things. But it was about myself and my best friend, who I'm still in close touch with. We get kidnapped by space aliens. So, there's this, I love science fiction. I mean, I read a lot of mysteries when I was young, but I loved science fiction was the other big area that I've read over the years. And I don't know what motivated me to write it at the time. I just wanted to write some fiction. And I'm pretty sure I was probably tackling some short stories then, but that's the only thing that sticks in my mind early on. Of course, it never saw publication. I never finished it, but that's the first thing I can think of.
So do you have stuff lying around that you've written in the past that you go, maybe I'll revisit it and want to publish it now? Or
from fiction, I'm thinking, I don't think I have anything. No, that's not true. I mean, I have a couple of novels that I wrote that agents represented that I never sold. And they are in the boxes, that I eventually stuck them away in. And I also have a nonfiction book I one year when I was still obviously pretty young, I traveled the country visiting communes back in the 70s when communes were a big thing around the country. And I traveled around and interviewed people at the communes and kind of documented my travels and put it together in a book. And I never sold that, but, sent it into publishers. I'm not going to haul that one out. And I do have my very first novel that I wrote is kind of an event. It's more of an adventure novel really than a mystery. It's a crime elements, but I've kind of part of me thought about it. Well, now that I know about self-publishing, should I haul that out? But yeah, probably should stay in the box.
Probably written on a old typewriter.
Oh
probably,
yeah.
The paper's all yellow now from sitting around.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I got a bunch of that. I had a file safe, one of those fire safes that stuff, and every now and then I'll pull it out and you read it and you go, at least for me, I go, yuck. Definitely. I mean, the idea was okay. It's just the actual writing and everything.
I mean, it was an interesting story and say an adventure story. And sure, if I went back and I would just rewrite it. I mean, I hope I'm a better writer than I was then, and so. I could rework it, but I don't think it's where I want to put my energy these days.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we all have those. I know I have three. I have a trilogy of novels I wrote, and I just wrote them for myself. Never got them published or anything. Way before, it was like in the 80s when I wrote it, and I did a lot of it on an old manual typewriter. Then it was like, okay, now getting it into digital and all that, and which I have the digital files now, but. They're still on my computer somewhere, but yeah, I revisit it every now and then and go, geez, would it be something I want to revisit? But it's so out of date now, it would have to almost be totally rewritten unless I want to go back in time type of thing. So
I haven't reread it. Mine's not dug around and looked at it probably just as well. Someday my kids will throw it out, but
won't end up in the Smithsonian, huh?
No, probably not. For some university, wants to keep my papers.
That's right. Yeah, you'll have your own wing in the university, right? You just got to donate a lot of money to get the wing, so that's the only problem, right? University of Iowa, yeah, we'll give you a wing, but you're going to have to give us about $1 million.
It's several $1 million bucks.
Yeah. So it sounds like you mentioned, are you traditional or are you an indie author?
I've done both. The first two books I published through my agent in New York, was published by St. Martin's Press, and then I did the next couple of books. We parted company. I didn't have great sales with those, and then I've since reissued them as self-published books. But and then I did a couple more books that were done by small presses. One of which still has one of my books, and then the last two were from scratch, self-published. I've never gone the hybrid route. I've had friends who've done that, but I haven't tackled that myself. So I, hire somebody to do my covers and you can do a lot on your own and I occasionally had people format it and that kind of stuff, but self-publishing and traditional, I've done both.
Do you pay someone to help you edit as well, or you try to do a lot of it yourself?
I do that pretty much on my own. I have people who read my books, kind of beta readers who offer suggestions, but hiring people to edit's pretty expensive, and I've kind of avoided that route. And hopefully I don't make too many mistakes in it. I'm sure they could be better books if I had some top editor go through them, but
yeah, I have an editor and she's actually an author and she's pretty good. And but for me, I've got to have I have to have an editor. I don't have a degree like you do, and
well, I don't know how much that helps.
Language. I struggle with punctuation, and the English language frustrates me sometimes with, okay, is this where you want to is this where there's a comma, or that's paragraph, new paragraph, all that, short sentences, long sentences, I read, Lee Child, and Lee Child does a lot of fragmented, very short sentences in his book, and he does "and" a lot, and in the same sentence. And I'm thinking, wow, if someone would have tell me, because I get some people say, don't do fragments unless maybe it's an action scene. Then they say fragments are good for action scenes, short, punchy stuff. So.
I feel generally pretty comfortable. I'm not saying, obviously, I don't make mistakes or from plotting standpoints or things that I've missed. I'm not great at typos, but I generally get most of them, I think. And, sometimes I have a writer acquaintance who hired an editor he was doing a self-published book. And I started reading the book, and I stopped and I started going back and I started marking all the errors that were in the book. I mean, really, really basic punctuation errors. And I'm thinking, in fact, I asked him, I said, you hired somebody to do this? I don't know who he got, but it was not pretty. And I've seen that a couple of times with friends who hired. I mean, there are obviously very good editors out there. I'm not knocking the editing profession at all, but just because you have an editor doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get good results. So,
well, even the big boys occasionally miss stuff in the big books. So you'll see some occasional typo here and there, and you got to figure it's been through how many different people.
I had a friend of mine who said one of Stephen King's books, he was reading it, and he said for about 4 pages, the character's name changed. The same character, but the name changed for several pages, and then he got back on track. Now, how Stephen King, but in particular his editors, missed that, which of course tells you, I mean, there's been a lot of famous errors that well-known authors who have gone through a rigorous editing process by professionals in New York still make things, odd mistakes here and there. So it's just how many of them is the issue. If that's every page, that's a problem.
Yeah. And there are some, I don't want to knock indie because I'm an indie author, but there are some indie books that are really bad that have a lot of errors in them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And those are things that I know for me, I know my early work probably wasn't as good as it is. And I've been through 4 different editors, and it's a struggle to find an editor that really works well for you.
Yeah.
And does it. And okay, so I just got Lanessa. She was actually on my very first interview episode, and she was just commented here about good. She's a well-known author. She does suspenseful romance type stuff, and she was a big winner at Killer Nashville last year. So,
okay.
So she was one of hers. So, hi, Lanessa. Thanks for being on. So,
sounds like she knows her stuff.
Yeah, well, and it's always a struggle. And she I think she does some editing as well of other authors also, and it can be, some it's per page, some it's per word, and so much. So yeah, you can send a lot of money.
Yeah,
but it is important because you're not going to sell a lot of books if it isn't properly edited. And I know for me, I definitely have to have somebody edit for me, or my books would be horrible. And I know my my editor, she comes back, says, "This doesn't advance the story. Get rid of it." Those type of things. Because I have a tendency to prattle on a little bit in my books, and especially my Jarvis Man, because it's first person, so it's his eyes and everything, and his brain working, and his brain is my brain working. So.
Yeah. I understand. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Yes. And Lanessa just commented and said hello to both of us. So tell us about your books and the genres you're in, and any new releases you got coming out.
Okay, so I have 6 books published. They're all mysteries. I call them whodunits, which of course many mysteries are, but if you read very widely in the mystery field, there are a lot of books or authors who don't particularly focus on the kind of whodunit part. And when I say whodunit, I'm thinking of, well, my books aren't Agatha Christie books in that sense, where we put everybody in the parlor at the end of the book. They are books that I try to present a fair number of people who could be suspects in it. It mixes with certain, in some cases, elements of thriller writing. There's action scenes and things, not predominantly. I don't have a PI in my books, but I always want to have. I want the readers to be able to read all the clues, get sidetracked with the red herrings and all that sort of thing, and hopefully, when they get to the end, they haven't figured it out, ideally, and when they do, they go, "Oh, yeah, why didn't I see that coming?" And I try not to cheat on that. I mean, everything is there in the book. It may be specific physical clues or something that's said or psychology of things or whatever it is. I hope the reader gets to the end and go, "I didn't figure that out, but that was good. You didn't cheat. I didn't bring in something right at the end that you never told the reader about." I grew up on those books. I consumed Agatha Christie and Rex Stout and Ellery Queen and Raymond Chandler, who's my all-time favorite mystery writer. I've always written books like that. They have different settings. I have, as you mentioned, I don't write a series. I have 2 of the books have a second book with the character, and then I have 2 others that are standalones. But they're all and they have different settings and different characters, but it's all the kind of the same principle. It's the whodunit approach. That's the way I like to do my books.
Yeah, that's so I'm guessing that kind of gets to the point. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Sounds to me like you're probably a plotter, though, because you've got to have all that stuff ironed out pretty much.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat here and say I'm in between, which is actually true. I'm certainly not a pantser. How people sit down with, well, I have this character's name or the title or something, or maybe they've got this very opening scene in their mind, but they don't, nothing else, and start writing. I couldn't begin to do that. I do a fair amount of brainstorming. I certainly want to develop my main characters. I certainly want to have some sense of the plot. But I'm not a plotter. I have friends who plot, who literally plot out every chapter and every scene before they start. I can't do that. I get antsy to begin with. And 2, I don't feel like I can. I've long said that I write with my fingers. It's like I need to eventually start writing. And yeah, I need to kind of know where I'm going, but I discover things as I write. And so I say I fall in between those 2 things. You have to be kind of open for serendipity, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And so
Lanessa here was commenting about red herrings. She says it's her jam, which I'm not surprised. I think she does a lot of red herrings in hers too. So yeah, she was she's right about that. And yeah, for me, I'm very much a pantser. I do start with just a little bit at the beginning. I may have the basic premise and everything, but I kind of let my characters write my stories for me a lot of times. But I see I can't see that far in advance. A true plotter, as you said, they've got everything mapped out to the end, and I can't see that far into the future for me.
Well, and that's why I get enough to feel I can get going. I'll give you one example. Is the 2 stories that I published with St. Martin's is about a woman bail bond agent who lives in Denver. And the second novel I wrote, I had this kind of general idea who the killer was, but I wasn't set on it. I wasn't really crazy about it. And I'm probably, I don't know, 80 or 90 pages into the first draft. And I have a couple of characters, and there's one character who comes on the scene. And I literally went, that's my killer. And I knew instantly why, instantly. But I didn't have that plotted in advance. I had to write into the book to get that. And I always felt, I always felt like he was the right person. And of course you have to then do some rewriting along the way and this kind of stuff. But
Right.
That's why I kind of fall in between, just enough to get going and some general idea. But sometimes I know my killer right away and it stays that way, but got to be open to change.
I've got Angela here. She's another author. So she's kind of like you. She's a mix of both as well.
Yeah.
And I will say that I actually use Scrivener sometimes to keep track of characters and certain aspects, and hair color, eye color, all the things, their basic descriptions, what they do, and all the. So I do a little bit of that as well, so I do. That's a little bit of plotting, but that's more just to keep track of everything, because my books, and I don't know about your books, but it sounds like maybe similar. I've had some books there I have 50, 60 characters in a book, and keeping track of all those as you're writing. I can usually keep track of them pretty well, but
I don't know if I have
it written down.
I'm not sure if I've ever had that many characters, but certainly when you're writing a whodunit and you've got various clues and there's a lot to keep track. I use Scrivener. I've used it. I don't like to write on it. I prefer to write in Word. But I do use it for, as you say, keeping notes and things. But I like the feature where you set up your scenes, and so I can move scenes. It's not uncommon for me to go, oh, this isn't the right place for this scene. And it's a great way to really keep track of all that and keep it organized. So I use it from that standpoint, and I found it very handy.
Yeah, Lanessa says she uses Scrivener as well. And Angela says she uses Plotter.
I've heard of that. I've never explored that, but it sounds like a pretty good program.
So do you have so some of your books, you told us a little bit, and you gave me a few pictures of some of your books. So what's your most recent book?
The most recent one I did is called No Time for Murder. It's been out about a year.
Yeah, so you've got that one, which
I
love that cover. I don't know who does your covers, but I love that the clock.
Yeah, that was it was a woman. She's actually in England that I found, and she's done three of my covers, and like anything, you tend to collaborate. I had this. I was actually trying to avoid the clock thing. No time. I'm thinking, and I went through all these ideas, and I didn't like any of them. And I tossed some around with her, and I gave her some ideas that I liked. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to do a clock, I got some images off the internet and gave her those, and she played with them. But this one, she came up. I never envisioned that, and I really like. I think it's my favorite cover of the covers she's done. So worked out well.
Yeah, I like the analog clock too. I'm sure there are people out there who can't even read an analog clock these days. Everything is so digital. But analog is kind of making a comeback.
I was playing digital and everything else, and she just can't. She, as I said, she gave me a bunch of ideas based on what I had suggested, but she came up with that one, and I immediately fell in love with it. And the crack that she runs down there, which is kind of symbolic and part of the story too.
Yeah. Angela says she's heard of that. Great cover. She said, yeah, I like that. And I know that's on your tagline too, from your.
Oh, death wasn't on the calendar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it fits the story. I mean, it's what the story's about in a way.
Well, and like Lanessa says, it's not a cluttered cover. It's very basic.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble with that early on in some of my books, where I want to cram so much into the cover, and I've tried to get a lot more basic, at least with my covers, maybe a little bit of stuff in the background, but there's always one major thing in the foreground. But I have to say that when I saw that cover, I go, yep, that was good. And the cover does get people to buy your books. So
yeah, I think it helps. But yes, you're right. I know the small press that I sold a book to, and I got this cover from the initial cover, and he must have had it's set in 1949 Denver. So he crammed in about 6 different things in there. And I'm going, I mean, I came back and said, no, this isn't going to work. And we played and played, and he finally reduced the cover down to a set of tracks, which is part of the story, and some blood that's on the tracks. That's it. He had a body in there, and he had an old car, and I mean, it was just so cluttered. And it's not the greatest of covers, but it improved a lot, and it improved because it became simple, much simpler. And I think I see a lot of, especially indie covers. I see a lot of indie covers with way too much stuff in them. It's too much.
Well, yeah, and some of them they buy covers too, and then buy stock covers and
Sure.
then convert them and stuff. And yeah, I have a cover artist. I always give her the kind of a basic idea, and even my daughter has drawn a few things for me, which I used to have on the wall here. I guess I don't have them on here anymore. Oh yeah, she did a couple of, because she likes to sketch and draw and stuff, so she'll kind of do a little basic things for me. And then I'll send that to the cover artist, and then she'll just run with it, and go. But I always have, and sometimes when I start a book, I have no idea what the cover is going to be like until I get through, and I'm like,
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
struggling, like, what's going to work,
They can be a struggle as to what conveys what you want. Some one of the covers, the woman who did my last book, she did the previous book, and she stuck very closely to the cover idea I had, and I'm pleased with it. She added some things, which of course made it a better cover, but it can be a challenge coming up with a good one.
Yeah, that's always. I Need No Time for Murder. Sounds like it's right in my zone of reading, Lanessa says. So,
all right.
Yeah. That's always a good thing. So you sent me a couple other of your books. Let's see here. Well, what other ones here? You sent me.
Well, do like The Big Dive. This cover was done by the same artist. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was the second of 2 books I have about a Denver street cop. The original book, the first book is in 1949. This book is in 1951. And I think, I mean, either now or later, I can talk about a couple of things about the plot, which is why I did this cover. And I really strongly wanted this particular. You can see from the cop car, it's an old cop car. Like anything else, you got to tell people, especially if it's historical, you've got to convey that in some way in the cover. And I just
said this was the 50s. The storyline was.
This is 1951. Yeah, this is. But say it's a street cop, and the previous one is the one I was talking about, blood on the tracks.
So did you find that challenging to go back in time and try to make it, correct when it comes to the nostalgia of that era and the clothing and all that?
There's certainly much more research involved with it than, say, No Time, which is a contemporary book and a very autobiographical book in a way. Yes, it was an idea I had. Actually, it was a long time ago. I had written it, and I won't go through all the backstory of why I didn't see print. But anyway, I actually, when I first researched that, I had to go into newspaper stacks and microfiche and all that, because we didn't have an internet to research a lot of that. And of course, you read books. The book is kind of my homage to Raymond Chandler. I always wanted kind of that hard-boiled feel. And so you can read books like that, and you get a sense of clothing from those books, that sort of thing. So,
that's definitely challenging. You always see TV shows when they go back in time, and it's like every now and then it seems like there's a modern item shows up somewhere. In there.
Yeah, right. Somebody's current watch. I think that people have said they've seen Starbucks coffee cups work their way into some scene that's supposed to be, decades old. But that particular book, which is one of my favorite from probably a plot standpoint, involves two main true historical threads. And so I researched both of those heavily because they were integral. They were really the key drivers of the plot. And so, yeah, you one is about how long have you lived in the Denver area?
I've been here since 1981.
Okay. Well, these plots were before either of our time here, but I'll mention the one in particular was in 1961, there was a big scandal that broke about dirty cops in Denver. They had theft rings. They were breaking into stores, stealing safes, just using their position as police, as mostly patrol officers, to steal things. And but the case broke in the 60s. They end up arresting something like 50 cops. And it made Life magazine. I actually have the original magazine from 60s that had that story. Wow. And but they had been doing it for years. So I kind of took that principle and backed it up to 1951. And then so I did the research connected to that. I mean, I had to learn, like, how do you cut into a safe? If you're using a saw, how do you do that? I had to find stuff like that.
Probably didn't have plasma welder or plasma cutters in those days.
They did, but eventually there were things that people. There was one guy who was one of the cops who was arrested, who wrote his own book about it, and I read things. I actually got the title out of the Life magazine story, and so. But I enjoyed doing that. The trick is, not overdoing it, and you'd spend an awful lot of time. And then I combined that with another thread that goes back to World War II, to the Japanese relocation camps. And of course, Denver, Colorado had one of those camps in southeast Colorado. Mm-hmm. And so the two plot lines I take from those two true stories and bring them together for the plot. So, but nice. Yeah, it's a fair amount of research, but it's fun. I like learning all that stuff.
Yeah, Vanessa was talking about contemporary and getting it right. Yes, that's definitely challenging, especially when you didn't live in that era. I could do the 80s, okay. 80s hairstyles and all that, but all of that's it. And she was talking about Joe Kenda, Colorado Springs detective, has a show of actual cases he worked since the 70s.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. I'm not familiar with that. Yeah.
Yes, and Angela here, mixing facts and fiction is fun. So I don't think I asked you to begin. We're coming up about 50 minutes here. I don't know how much time you have. I usually go about an hour, but if we go a little longer. I have
lots of time, but I realize you may need to cut it off eventually.
I'm mostly retired these days, so I kind of pick and choose. So I always give my days. So we had talked about this before. So do you base any of your characters on real people? People maybe people you've met?
Generally, I don't do much of that. I've had some secondary characters where I've kind of borrowed parts of friends. But there is one exception to that, and that is No Time for Murder, which literally is based on myself and my family. And to convey that, I'll give you a quick summary of the book. Is a man who's a freelance writer, like me, who's been a former investigative reporter, which I was not, and has written a couple of true crime books, in the past, and one sold fairly well, etc., which I've not written. But he and his family is the usual busy family, right? He's schlepping his kids to soccer practice and music lessons and, all the many things we do that just keep us really, really busy in life. Many of them annoying little chores, taking the cat to the vet and all this kind of stuff. And so he is asked by the widow of his best friend, who has committed suicide about 5-6 weeks before the story opens. And she's telling him, I believe he was murdered. And he's going, no. He was officially ruled a suicide. I know the detective who worked the case, etc. He doesn't buy it. And and as he said in his head, I have no time for murder.
Right.
And so, and just like the phrase, death wasn't on the calendar. So this harried man, and he finally kind of commits and pokes around, and so the story is him trying to find out what's really behind either his friend's death or suicide or murder. And he finds things, and additional people die, etc. But he's doing this while he's running his life. He's interviewing one guy in the middle of a soccer match that he's coaching, that kind of thing. And so it's me, and it's I have two, there's two kids in the story. They're like my kids. My son read the story and he goes, "Dad, you've written about our family." So I've not really stolen. There's a couple of characters in there. One of them I do kind of borrow some things from a friend of mine, but that's as close. I shouldn't say as close. It's pretty close. I mean, it's really the guy's a list maker, which I'm a addict for making lists of doing chores, etc. So yeah, it's definitely borrowed real people there.
Well, that's we always steal from things we see a lot of times.
Sure,
a little bit here and there, and makes interesting characters, which kind of goes to the title of my show, Bringing Life to Characters. It sounds like that. What is it you try to do to your characters to make them lifelike? Is there, you feel there's real tricks to it in your mind? What little things that you look for to get your characters so they pop off the page to people?
Well, of course, probably the broader brush things is I'm just big in they need to be involved, and you need to have conflict, and you need to have a reason for them to be involved in the conflict. Either it's thrust upon them or they initiate something. And when you do conflict like that, you have to bring out things that the characters do. How do they respond to a particular event? In this case, here's a guy who, I'll use no time. The character doesn't want to be involved in this. He pushes it away for 3 or 4 chapters, but he can't quite keep himself out of it. His background is an investigative reporter, and he does start to sense some things that were odd about his friend's suicide. And so to whatever extent I brought him alive, it's him. He's initiating the investigation. In a lot of ways, he goes to a detective he knows, and of course he gets conflict with the detective who tells him to butt out. It was a suicide, forget it. And as other crimes show up, he's trying to figure out how they could be connected to it. So all those things bring him out, and his wrestling with all the family stuff he's doing, I hope makes him an alive character. I would imagine that a lot of people who have similar busy lives would kind of go, "Oh yeah, I've been there. I'm doing that." They may not be investigating a murder, but they can feel what he's going through because they've been doing the same thing.
We all multitask.
Oh yeah,
we're all multitasking. Yeah. We're all doing a lot. We're all balancing our life, and
yeah. He's doing that, and so I think that's the conflict, and of course the motivation. Why does the character do something? You always have to give some reasons for why they would be involved in something, or maybe from the viewpoint of the bad guy as well as your good guys. And I try to do that, and you try to make interesting things out of them. My Ruby Dark character, who's the woman bail bondsman, I kind of keep her with a shadowy past, how she got into the bail bond business, all that, which I hope is sort of intriguing to people. She's kind of a larger than life character in her habits and her dress and her Lamborghini she drives around, and that kind of thing. So hopefully those will make readers kind of go, "Wow, she's kind of an interesting character." And it's as you know, it's tough writing characters and to make them interesting. It's not an easy chore. But
well, for me, making them different too, because sometimes I have so many characters in my book. So
yeah.
Angela was saying, it sounds like it's her kind of mystery. And then Lanessa was asking, and I was gets to awards. Have you won any awards? Have you ever submitted any of your books?
I never have. I mean, yeah, I was aware of it. I never ended up submitting any books to it.
Yeah, that's a big one. And Lanessa won last year. She won for best overall book, and then she won for, I think it was suspense as well. I won best thriller a couple of years as well. So
yeah, that's great.
Gives me a reason to go to Nashville, though. In August, it's a little. We're talking about Iowa.
Yeah,
it's a little on the humidity size. And yes, Lanessa talks about conflict.
The other thing I'd add about characters is, of course, you need to talk about their flaws. What things don't they do well, or secrets they may have that they don't want exposed, or that's kind of stuff that helps make them a rounder character.
Well, unfortunately, we all have flaws, right?
Yeah.
And even I've often said, even your good characters have flaws. Nobody's ever completely good. Nobody's ever completely bad. Even your bad characters, they can sometimes have good things about it, and that makes them multi-dimensional, so to speak. So what advice do you give to aspiring authors out there? Any good advice? You've been writing all your life, it sounds like. So,
well, I guess I would say, as my life suggests, I always have used the phrase, you really have to be hungry to do this. I mean, you really need to. This is not a business you go, wow, I think it'd be cool to be on the bestseller list. I'll write a book. I mean, it just isn't extraordinarily rare that that's going to work. You have to really want to write. Because we're talking about fiction. I mean, there's so many complicated aspects of fiction, and you need to learn. You need to obviously read. There's a lot of great books and articles, things about writing. I've learned a lot from that. I learn a lot from my reading. But you have to have a real passion for it, because somewhere in my house, I have a shoebox full of rejection slips back in the days when they mailed out rejection slips. I was talking about, I did this when I was in high school. We're talking back in the 60s and 70s so I have all these lovely rejection slips, and for some silly reason I kept them. I think I was going to create a work of art out of them or something once I published my first book. But you have to be willing to accept those and not quit. I mean, I know I've met more people who are kind of want to be writers, and I sent it out a couple of places and it got rejected and I put it in a drawer, or I wrote 100 pages but I never finished the book. I mean, you have to do that. You have to persevere, and it's tough.
Yeah, I often tell people, don't give up your day job to be a writer unless you got a lot of money in the bank, because very few make a lot of money at it. The big names are very successful. James Pattersons of the world, who put his name on every 20 books a year now, and who knows how much he makes off all those. And everyone else out there, the Lee Childs, Michael Conleys, and all that. But don't give up and do it because you have a passion for it. And you wholeheartedly agree. You want to do it, and I find it therapeutic at times as well. For me, for writing is just kind of my therapy sometimes.
Well, you can imagine my writing No Time for Murder, since I'm the poster child of somebody who's writing lists and too busy. So I'm not sure if it solved anything for me, but it was certainly therapeutic from that standpoint. Yeah. I think the other thing I would add for people who are looking at writing is to write what you love to read. I grew up loving mysteries. I also like science fiction, but I would have no talent to do that. Yeah. But don't go chasing the next hot item like, romance. Well, I don't like romances, but I'm going to write one because that's where all the books are being sold, or some other, usually a subsection of a genre, like, oh, that's hot, steampunk or whatever. If you're not reading it, if it's not something you love, your odds of writing a book that's going to sell in that just because you think it could sell I think is a ridiculous search. So,
Well, I always see these people who put this, how to write a best-selling novel. Well,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But you got to write what you want to write. I mean, to
correct.
me, it's got to be in your heart and all that. And I've always been a big mystery thriller. I mean, Robert B. Parker was my hero,
Hmm.
the Spencer series and all that. But
Hmm.
I read Robert Ludlum. I read Ian Fleming. I read the very first early James Bond books, which seem so
Yeah,
dated
yeah,
now, but
yeah.
they're still really good. So yeah, all those, Raymond Chandler, all those, the hard-boiled detectives and the thrillers. I've always
Hmm.
enjoyed those type of books. So yeah, you do need to write what you enjoy, but don't just write something to try to write a bestseller. Try
Yeah,
to shoehorn it in there, so to speak, because it isn't going to work for you.
yeah. It's tough.
Yeah. Okay, so what events do you like to do? Any events coming up you're going to be going to?
I don't do a lot of. I know you do a lot of, as you say, craft shows and things where you have a chance. I've done some of those. I don't do a lot. I happened to by chance stumble across, and what did I put the sheet for here?
Bruce with his books there.
Yeah, where I would sell books. The Castle Rock writers have something called Meet the Author Fair, which is Saturday, May 18th. And at the Castle Rock Recreation Center from 2 to 6 on that Saturday afternoon. I just became aware of them. I put in my pitch to be on it. They've got 32 authors in a variety of genres, so they couldn't take everybody. So I applied and got in, obviously, as a mystery writer. I don't know anything about them. I have no idea what kind of audience. I'm not even clear if this is the first year or they've done this for a while. I don't know. So I've done a few things like that, and book clubs. I've spoken to book clubs, but I don't do a lot of the events such as yourself, where I go to farmers markets. They sell books at those. I've just not tackled that.
Yeah, and I know you do that. You've done the Georgetown one in the past. You're
Georgetown,
part of the Colorado Authors League, which is a group of
yeah,
authors who kind of help each other.
right, yeah.
And Jody Bowersock runs that, in which she's going to be one of my guests here in the future as well. But
Good, yeah,
yeah,
should be fun to have.
So, and here's a couple other your books. You had Bonded for Murder.
That was my first published book. That was with St. Martin's Press. Not with that cover. In fact, they had a horrible cover. I'm not a big fan of this cover, but it's better than what they had when I reissued it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the woman bail bond agent in Denver.
Yeah. Yeah.
She
You
was a fun character.
Colorado.
I really enjoyed. She's my favorite character of all my characters.
Yeah, Lanessa talks about craft fairs. That's where she goes and does. The nice thing about craft fairs is a lot of times you're the only author there. So I do a lot of holiday ones. Sometimes it's hard to find good ones because everybody seems to be doing craft fairs around Colorado these days, and there's a lot of scams going on too. You got to be careful.
Yeah, I'm not tuned into all those fairs, and I wouldn't mind doing a few of them. I'm not sure that I would do. I know a fantasy writer. In fact, he's been up at Georgetown. He does like 35 or 40 of those a year. But he does big cons. He'll do those, and I thought, well, that's just an insane schedule. But that's how he sells his books. So,
yeah, the fantasy writers, they can usually do pretty good. I've done. I did the Colorado Springs Comic-Con one year, and they had one in Estes Park. I did okay with them, but not great. They're fun events to do if you like to see people dressing up in costumes and stuff. It was fun there, and there's a few celebrities wandering around. They had some of the A-Team folks that were at the one in Estes Park, and they had an A-Team, the old A-Team band van that they drove. It was a replica of it, the guy that takes it around to various Comic-Cons. But they've gotten so expensive is the biggest
Oh
one.
yeah, he spends a lot of money on those. Yeah. But he does well with them. I would think as a mystery writer, we generally would be out of place in those. We don't have the equivalent to those that I can think of.
Yeah.
That you would go to a big mystery con. I mean, there's Boucher Con and some of those, but they're really designed for writers more than they are readers.
Right, there's fans that go to it. And this year BoucherCon is going to be in Nashville, so right after Killer Nashville. So we're going out there for 2 weeks. We're going to stay in our
that'll be a
motorhome
nice
for 2
combo.
weeks.
Yeah.
So we're going to live in Nashville for 2 weeks in our motorhome. My wife, she can work remotely, which is nice.
Yeah.
And when we were there in Nashville the last year, I went with my daughter. We flew out and we were looking at RV sites that had good internet connections, which sometimes internet connections and RV sites are horrible. We found one that just upgraded theirs and it was really fast. So we're like, yep, we're staying at this one. And it's just down the road from where, because BoucherCon's going to be at the Gaylord there. Is where it's going to be at, and the Killer Nashville's is down in Franklin, I think is, and stuff. So it's good stuff. Okay, and so let's see here. And you had one other book.
There's probably Ropeburn in there. Do you have Ropeburn cover?
Yeah, we've got that one. Let's see. Yeah, Ropeburn. There's that one. That's a nice clean cover too. I like how the noose goes around your letters there. That's good.
Yeah, and that was one that it's set in Wyoming, contemporary cattle country, and it does have cattle rustling, which of course a lot of people don't. Isn't that from the 1880s kind of thing? There's still lots of cattle thefts, and I have in-laws up there. I've been up to Brandings and a lot up there, and I always knew I wanted to do a mystery up there. So when we did this cover, and this was done by the same woman who did my No Time for Murder cover, I said we have to have something in here that says it's contemporary, and so hence the pickup to let people know that. And there's cattle in the background, so they have some sense of that. And yeah, I love the way she worked the rope in through the letters. The book does open with somebody being hanged, so hence the rope and rope burn. You can burn yourself from roping too. So
and then you had Harrington's Game, and I think isn't that one of the ones you give away? Is that right?
Yeah, this is my. If people go to my website and you can find the link for this, it's kind of like you use giveaways. I mean, people would need to sign up for the newsletter, and of course they can always bail later. But yeah, this is a little different animal for me. It's a crime novella. I don't know, 35,000 words, maybe something like that. And that does have a PI in it, and but it's not really a whodunit. It's about he's hired by a really wealthy man, a billionaire, who says, "I've committed a perfect crime, prove it," and he gives him that challenge. And as you might expect, there's a few more twists to it than that. So it's not my traditional whodunit, but it was just an idea I'd had for years, and I finally sat down during the pandemic and thought, well, I should do this book and this novella and give it away. So I've had good reaction to it from people. So yeah, there's my website. So
right there.
Or if you only remember just Bruce, you got to get that W in there, but brucewmose.com. You will, and all my books are there, links to them. All my books are on Amazon. You can go to Amazon and just find a book or put in my name and find my books. But on my website would be the link to like the crime novella. I've got sample chapters, all the books, so you can read the first chapter of each book to see if that strikes your fancy. So it's it's kind of the best place to really get to know me. And anyway, but you can go straight to Amazon and find my books too, and they're both print and Kindle.
So did you have to do the W? Was brucemost.com?
I did. I think I started with Well, I signed my books Bruce W. Most to begin with, so I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to stick that.
Stick
But
with
I
that.
think initially I might have done Bruce Most, and to my surprise, somebody had it because Most is not a common name.
Not that common, yeah.
But no small part because I do use my middle initial on my book title or my books.
Okay. So yeah, we got that. And do you do social media much?
I have spent times doing it. I'm probably the worst person to ask about. So I mean, marketing. I think I'm a terrible marketer. I do have a newsletter. I've been erratic getting it out at times. I do social media in the sense of I will post things on Twitter. I have my own Facebook page, both a personal page and an author page. I've been on I have presence on LinkedIn, Instagram, which I don't use much anymore. And I think I'm missing something there. Oh, Threads, which is the Facebook version of Twitter. I post things on there, either about my own book. Sometimes I'll join like a promo, it's like a whole group of authors, and I'll promote that on there because my Harrington game is involved with that. But I can't say that I'm not a good person to say, well, how do I use social media to sell lots of books? I just haven't found success with it.
Well, I know for me, I didn't even want to get on social media when I first started doing this, but it was kind of one of those, you kind of had to. And then it's kind of getting through all the crap with media as well. So
why my phone is ringing. Hold on here. Just trying to get it turned off. Not doing a good job of that. Hold on. Anyway, I mean, I think for us indie authors, if we're really ever going to sell a lot of books, it's pretty hard to avoid social media because it's the only place you're going to find thousands of readers. We can only hand sell so many books, and I mean it's great to do that, and I like doing those events and meeting people in person. But unfortunately, I think for us, since we're not floating through bookstores, we don't have some publisher putting, my first 2 Ruby Dark books, I found them in King Soopers when they were published way back when. And, but, it's impossible pretty much to do that as an indie author. So you have to sell your stuff online if you're going to get a lot of people. So.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with Amazon. It's the devil, you got to use them, but there's times when it's like, man, they take so much more money than I really feel like they should.
No, I understand. Yeah, I'd rather hand sell a print book, than sell a Kindle for $3 or $4. But it just comes with the territory. But we're only in it because we love it, right?
Yeah, we're in it because we love it. Though we would like to take a little bit of Jeff Bezos' money. He could have one less mansion in the world and pay us a little bit more, right? So
yeah.
All right. Well, if there was anything else that you wanted to
I mean you've
plug or anything,
lots of questions, and I hope people have questions that I didn't answer. They can always contact me. Of course, they can contact me through my website. But no, it's been fun, and I'm sure we will cross paths here at some point. I say I need to do more in-person events, just occasionally. I don't see myself doing a lot of them, but
well, if you want some info on any of the events that I've done that are pretty good, I'll be happy to share with you. I have a big list of them every year, and some are better than others.
Yeah.
The holiday ones are usually good, high schools and stuff like that. Some are hard to get in. You got to plan 6-9 months in advance. They fill up pretty fast, but you can always get your name on a waiting list and stuff. So.
Well, I see them, and the Authors League has been putting out some of these events coming up. They've talked about them, which is a nice resource too. So. Okay. Well, thank you, Angela, for hanging out with us.
Yeah, Angela and Lanessa both. Lots of questions. I couldn't get all of them up on there. There was a lot of them, but Angela was talking about she was thinking about going to Ingram and getting away from Amazon. And I know some people think the paperbacks are better quality. I talked to one author; he thinks Kindle Direct Publishing is better. One of the problems with Ingram is if you have to update your book, they charge you each time. So
Yeah.
that's the only bad thing. I guess they have some free months in there, so you got to remember to do that then.
Yeah, with Amazon, you just have to make a new, like my last one, I did my own PDF. And so I could, in theory, go back and make some changes in that, put it back up on Amazon. It wouldn't cost me anything if I found some small things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, Amazon doesn't charge you anytime you update anything, but Ingram does. And it's like $50, I think is what it was. So that was kind of the reasons why I kind of stayed away from Ingram. Ingram, you get a little more wider distribution sometimes.
Yeah. I did one of my books with Ingram. Briefly, what we call going wide, where I got outside of Amazon, and I found it a lot of work, and I wasn't selling that many more books. I mean, I know people who do well going wide, but I thought, well, it's just easier to stick with Amazon for now. And I don't need to give Jeff Bezos any more money than he's got, but I do want readers to find my books, and that's an easy way to do it. So
yeah, like I said, they're the devil, I mean, it's Amazon. How many people are on Amazon every day? I mean, it's incredible how much traffic and sales that they have every day. And if you're Kindle Unlimited, which almost all my books are Kindle Unlimited too, you have to stay on Amazon, which kind of aggravates me because I know there are some of the big publishers that they allow to be on Kindle Unlimited and still be wide. So, but us indie authors don't have that kind of power.
Yeah. It's a lot of, when you're doing your own stuff beyond just writing, there's just all this other stuff, marketing, the publishing side of it, everything from covers to, do I go wide? If I do, who do I go with? I mean, all this stuff is it's just more hours that we're not writing is the problem with it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, as I tell most people, you just give up sleep, right? It's give you plenty of time in the day to do all that stuff.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Bruce. I appreciate
thank you, Randy, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
No problem.
Always happy to talk to fellow writers.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. We killed a good hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, there. I guess we did, didn't we? Good.
Yeah. So
I guess we're both talkers, aren't we?
A little bit. That's okay. I don't think we bored anybody. So. Okay. Well, thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Randy.
Take care. Well, we'll see you around at events. And yes, email me. Send me some emails. I'll be happy to kind of give you some tips on some of the craft fairs that are.
I would love that.
Ones there.
Obviously, much more experienced and seasoned at that than I am. So
it cost me a lot of money to find the ones that were good. So, and sometimes even they're good one year and they're not as good the next year. Depending on the economy and all that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care, Bruce.
Thank you, Randy. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being on today. We went a little more than an hour, but hopefully it was good. Thanks, Angela and Lanessa, for comments and stuff. And I'll wrap it up with one final. Yes, we'll see you at Killer Nashville in August, and we'll be at BoucherCon as well. So yes, hopefully we can get together for dinner, Lanessa. For Lucky, your husband, Kim will be there as well. We can get away from the craziness of the event for at least a little while. I know they have some fun stuff there as well. So, but thanks everyone for being on. I'll probably be doing another one in a couple weeks. This one's going to be a little different. It's going to be, I'm going to do a takeover for the Wild Deadwood Reads on their Facebook page. So I'm going to stream it to their page, and I'm going to try to get some other authors on, talk about my books as well. Instead of doing posts, I'm going to do a live video instead, which should be hopefully a lot of fun. Thanks, Angela. We'll talk with you soon as well. I know I'm going to get Angela on down the road as well on the show. But yes, I'm going to do a Wild Deadwood Reads stream there. I'm going to try to get some authors. I don't know the timing yet, but it's going to be in May 13th, I think is the date. We're going to do it. And Yes, we'll see Lanessa and Deadwood as well. But yes, I'll do that, and I'm going to try to get some authors on, maybe even some readers, hopefully, if they want to put their face on camera. And we'll talk about books for an hour or two. I think should be able to kill that time. But I'll have more information on that. So, but thanks again, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.